Hey everyone, it's Alex here, and on today's episode of the YaBonks Show, I have a very special guest for you today. I have Alex from the Fraction Mining Project, and he's also a very popular YouTuber, and his YouTube account has over 81,000 subscribers. You probably know who he is and recognize him already, so it's super cool to have him on my channel today. And but today is about fraction mining, an up and coming project that's going to be using gas flaring to power Bitcoin mining and other proof of work mining protocols. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself and maybe tell us a bit about you?
Sure, absolutely. It's actually like the first time I've had an interview with another Alex. So it's an Alex and Alex. So
It's a good
um
name. It is a
yeah,
very good name.
good. Your parents did a great job. Great name.
Yours
Um
too. Cheers to that.
Cheers. For those that know me obviously on YouTube as Tactical Investing, for me, for those that know me through Fraction Mining, my name is Alexander Bannister. I'm the CEO, founder of Fraction Mining, alongside of three other individuals who are co-founders. So a lot of people know me from YouTube specifically. I've been on YouTube for about 2 years with talking about crypto and opportunities in crypto in general. And then obviously fraction mining as a protocol that uh, it's been an idea for multiple months. It's just come to more of a fruition and launching stage much more recently.
So, can you give me a brief overview of your project, fraction mining?
Sure, absolutely. So with fraction mining, there's a two-faceted approach to the protocol. And it's really all primarily on the backbone of Flare and us envisioning Flare being the future method of energy for the cryptocurrency mining aspect in and of itself. So with the Flare process, it's an approach for a alternative and environmentally friendly solution to cryptocurrency mining. In many ways, just changing the narrative that currently exists that Bitcoin mining is terrible for the environment, that Bitcoin mining is awful. So in many ways, that approach in and of itself is one facet of fraction mining and changing what everyone perceives or the agenda that's currently out there to showcase that Bitcoin mining is bad for the environment. And with the method of capturing the flare and opportunity that exists there is one faucet. And on that same backbone is built fraction mining as a project, which allows us for individuals who have, for the typical retail consumer that has multiple barriers to entry to mining cryptocurrency, whether that is the cost of ASICs, the cost of hosting based on electric prices, or even limitations in hosting itself, depending on where you live and your electric conditions, et cetera, depending on your country. Maybe you're in an apartment that doesn't have 240 volts. So, from that end, Fraction Mining as a project is focused on breaking down the barriers to mining cryptocurrency, whether Bitcoin, Litecoin, Doge Merge mining, or Cadena. So it's kind of a two-faceted approach. It's two birds with one stone, if you will, but it's all really built on the backbone of Flare.
Awesome. Super interesting stuff. And I think back in 2017, 2018, when this kind of started getting talked about in the Bitcoin circles that I would follow, I was super excited about this concept of gas flare mining of Bitcoin, and I think it completely nullifies that argument of is the energy consumption from Bitcoin mining prohibitive to our civilization
Sure.
as a whole and all that. And I am super excited about this concept. You're the first project that I've run into in my circles that
Sure.
is taking this head on, and it's really cool to be talking with you as you're starting up this company to do Bitcoin gas flare mining, which I
Sure.
think is just awesome thing that's going to completely revolutionize decentralized finance and proof of work technology. So with that being said, I won't go off on
I
a
hear you.
tirade there. Uh,
Sure.
so with that being said, before we dive deep into this, because I have a lot of questions about this entire landscape and how you're going to operate in it.
Yep.
Before we get to that, do you have any urgent news or upcoming important dates that you want to share with the audience before we jump into it?
Yeah, so we'll be having an announcement. We'll have by the time this is out, there'll be an announcement as far as the timelines of when we're having the mints, specifically for those who are whitelisted, the public mint in and of itself. Around that timeline, we're going to have, as we'll probably get into some of this, regarding questions. We'll have a lot more details regarding the project, and specifically, even more so, individuals who are partnering up with fraction mining. But for the typical individual that's looking to get involved in fraction mining, there will be some dates released, kind of give you a little bit of a timeline for preparation, knowing when certain things are going to be executed.
Okay. And so we can expect the initial NFTs, I think the membership NFTs, is that right, in the next couple days or so?
Yeah, so the membership NFTs are going to come first, as far as those getting minted, and then within 1 to 2 weeks thereafter, we're going to launch the BTC NFTs. We'll probably get into that as well, but
Yeah.
thereafter, it's just really looking at the opportunities and timelines as we get into the end of the year and holidays and stuff like that. Just making sure we work within individual schedules.
Awesome. And before we jump into some of the finer details of this, I just want to kind of reiterate what you were saying with what this project is. You're rolling out a membership NFT that's going to give people access to all of the hashing power NFTs for Bitcoin, which you're going to start with first. So you're going to have a Bitcoin mining hashing rate NFT that pays you out in hashing rate rewards, and then you'll roll out Kadena and Litecoin and Dogecoin in the next couple months and into 2023 and all that. So that's so anybody try to participate, that's how it works. You get the membership NFT, and then you'll get the Bitcoin NFT to get the hashing reward sharing, and then later on down the road, the Kadena NFT and the Litecoin NFT. Now, with that being said, so what is gas flaring, and why do oil and gas producers do it?
Yeah. So, for a brief introduction to Flare, it's not something that's new. It's existed for well over 100 years. And in many ways, when you have Flare specifically, it's part of a process that for most oil companies and oil rigs, it's too expensive to capture the natural gas and to pipe it out. It's way more cost effective for them to just simply burn it on site. And so if they're able to burn it on site, there are kind of negatives to that specifically, right? You have carbon emissions, you have to get licenses to be able to do that. So when it comes to flare, for the oil operators, it's a loss of potential revenue, right? If they were able to capture that natural gas and they were able to then sell that, that's a form of revenue. But instead, they're losing money by doing the whole process. So but in the end, flaring is safer than just releasing it directly into the atmosphere. And so that's kind of the process behind flare. Now, flare doesn't only exist solely through oil. There are other instances where flare is utilized. You'll have a lot of landfills that flare. You even have offshore wells that flare as well. There's a lot of flaring opportunities outside of just oil, but it is predominantly in the oil industry.
Absolutely. And I I want to reiterate what you were saying about it's a safety matter that they flare the gas coming out of these oil and gas wells, because if it builds up and the pressure gets too much and there's an explosion, it can be extremely dangerous. People have
Yep.
died, and then all of a sudden you get what's called a well blowout. And if you have a
Mhm.
blowout, you have to have a very, very crazy and brave specialist come in, like Red Adair. I don't know if you guys know Red Adair, but I watched a documentary on him back in the day called Hellfighters, and that dude's so
Sure.
badass. And he would go to these blown out wells. He'd get paid the big bucks to fly out there, and he'd go in there with like a cigarette in his mouth and just like go into this
Nice.
crazy explosions and fires. Like these things are insane. The amount of once a well's blown out, it's crazy, right? And then he would
Yeah.
go and use like nitroglycerin explosives and all sorts of different techniques to try to uh, cap the wells, they call it. And
Yeah.
I always found that fascinating. So if you don't flare the gas and keep it constantly burning to depressurize and not let the gas into the immediate atmosphere to build up, like you were saying, you could,
Yeah.
you can run into some issues if you don't do that. So it's a
Right.
safety reason, but it's extremely wasteful and it emits a
It,
lot of greenhouse gases like methane into the atmosphere. And
yeah.
for those reasons, global governments are trying to step in and put some regulation on flare gas, even though it's a necessary part of doing business as an oil and gas
Sure.
producer. So, with all that being said, how do you mine cryptocurrencies with flare gas?
Yeah, great question. And to kind of touch on your point, Alex, when it comes to Flare, as far as from a worldwide perspective, the World Bank Organization is looking for countries to partner up in order to do something called, you pulled it up, ZRF, zero routine flaring by year 2030. So when you look at countries partnering up with other countries to mitigate what's most would probably consider a necessary evil when it comes to flare, they're all looking at what are solutions to capture that methane and keep it from being released into the atmosphere, or have a better way to capture that methane, clean it up so it's at least carbon neutral, maybe not carbon positive, but it's at least carbon neutral, right? So what's ironic is the connection that I have, specifically a good friend of mine knows the individuals at Texas A&M who developed some of this technology and process behind capturing that methane, putting it into a generator and producing electricity from the flare that's captured. So you've got a solution to the World Bank Organization that cryptocurrency mining, in many ways, is a solution to their overall proposal for ZRF by 2030. So you don't really think of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency mining as the solution for carbon emissions, right? And in most instances,
Yeah.
most people have the narrative that Bitcoin mining is a contributor to carbon emissions, and that's why Bitcoin mining is terrible. But when you can flip the narrative and showcase that Bitcoin mining can be utilized for this worldwide um, form of adoption by 2030, is just like it's a win-win-win for everybody in many ways. So the technology that in the process of capturing the natural gas, turning it into a form of electricity to power cryptocurrency miners isn't really anything like new. It's not some Einstein thing that we've specifically created. It's been around for a few years now, and it's one of the reasons, for those who follow the news, ExxonMobil mines Bitcoin through their pilot company Crusoe Energy. And Crusoe, specifically, 80% of the energy that they get from their flaring sites goes into Bitcoin mining. So most people think of ExxonMobil, by far probably one of the world's largest oil companies, mines Bitcoin. And the way they do that is through flare. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's very cool, and I love seeing this kind of innovation in not only decentralized finance but in the energy sector. And one thing Michael Saylor has said a lot, and I listened to a lot of Michael Saylor over the years, right? I love
Yep.
Bitcoin. You can tell I've got an agenda here. I am going to become a future
I got my
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin account back there.
Yeah, dude. So I'm gonna become a future Bitcoin millionaire, as so many of my friends already have in this DeFi space. A lot of people I talked to made a fortune mining Bitcoin early, and now they're millionaires. And that I'm trying to get to that level. I think Bitcoin has a very bright future for the next 100 plus years, and I think people who are against Bitcoin, their main argument is the energy argument. Oh, well, why waste our precious energy from our power plants and grids to power the Bitcoin network when you could use proof of stake, right? But the thing
Sure.
is, proof of work is much more truly decentralized, and in
It
my
is.
opinion, more secure. So that's why, like, if I'm storing value, it's gonna be in Bitcoin most likely, or like, I don't know, like a little bit of gold maybe, but like mostly in Bitcoin because it's SHA
Sure.
256. You can't break it. You can't hack it. It's never been hacked, and it's proof of work, so you can't really, buy your way into taking it over.
Yep.
And Michael Saylor always said in his argument against the energy consumption issue is it's a good thing because it's going to foster innovation in the energy sector. And he said that like two years ago or something, and he was spot on with
It was.
flare gas mining and the volcano geothermal in
Yep.
what is that, El Salvador, and those are places like these gas wells that you can't get the grid to. The power lines to reach all the way back to the grid in some cases is too long, and the attenuation of the power flowing through those power lines dissipates to the point where it's cost prohibitive to even do it at all. So they're left with, this is basically a cost center for all of these oil and gas producers. These flare
Mhm.
gases are just burning money, but it's a cost of doing business out here. And this is allowing them to have a way to monetize that and put that energy to use, and then offset that energy that's getting pulled out of our main electrical grids that raises our electric costs right now.
Yep.
So anyway, awesome concept, man. I'm so excited just about the concept in general. So you explained how to mine it with the flare gas,
Sure.
and we talked about why it's good for the environment and decentralized finance. Um, so why would one of these oil and gas producers allow you to build on their property to mine cryptocurrencies, and how does it benefit them?
Sure, absolutely. So for them, right, they have a potential, the majority, like for them, their focus is oil, right? Oil is extremely valuable. So for them, they're okay with the net loss, if you will, of the natural gas. That for them, they're willing to pay the fines, they're willing to pay whatever it takes because the oil is what's most valuable to them. And so when you have a partner of ours that we're working with in Texas, and you have other companies in that we've discussed flaring opportunities with, when you have someone that comes in to that oil operation and says, "Hey, this that you consider to be completely waste, we'll pay you for it, right? You don't have to do a single thing. We're gonna provide all the infrastructure. You just provide us a plot of land to be able to set up that infrastructure. We're going to capture what you consider to be a loss and a waste, and we'll pay you for that." And
Mm,
so now you have the landowner who's like, wow, so I can focus on my oil and the revenue that generates for me. At the same time, I earn on something that for me is a waste of money. And it's just for them, it's a perfect opportunity. So that's kind of where that in lies, and that's where the benefit comes to them. And at that point, eventually, if you have the entire flare captured, and there's a lot of regulatory opportunities and benefits from carbon credits and stuff like that future on down the road that can be captured as well, by initiating a process similar to this. So there's a lot of value to the landowner and the owner of the well specifically.
awesome. Great response. I kind of want to point out, for people who don't know you, you're kind of a young dude, and you're
Yeah.
very well spoken and knowledgeable on these topics. How do you mind if I ask how old you are for the
Yeah.
audience?
Yeah, I'm 24.
Okay, so that's fairly young for this space. Obviously, we have young whiz kids coming out here at like 18, 19, like doing some
Sure.
crazy stuff, especially with code and everything. But in terms of like business knowledge and operating a business and everything like that, I run into only a few young entrepreneurs that I think are well spoken and knowledgeable, like you, and also Sam Pittman from Hydro Whales. He
Yep.
is like around your age as well, and just like super on top of things and smart. And now what do you do for a living, if you don't mind my asking?
Sure, absolutely. So, I don't know specifically Sam's story. For me, I'm in the Air Force, so that there's a level of maturity and kind of insight that you get from a level of the military lifestyle. There's a lot of structure behind that, so you kind of mature much faster for the majority of people in the Air Force, depending on why you join. But for me specifically, from a business perspective, I grew up in an entrepreneurial household.
Mhm.
My dad specifically has been extremely successful entrepreneur, from him being a um, working deals with Disney with a music studio. He owned about 60 music studios. This is back in the 70s, 80s,
Wow.
across the United States. Was working a massive deal with Disney. And from that, there was another opportunity more recently. He just retired from owning and operating one of the largest um, wastewater management companies when it comes to septic and stuff like that in
Man,
North Carolina.
dude,
One of the largest there. So
I'm gonna add something to what you just said about your
sure.
dad. Your dad, it sounds a lot like my dad, and it's kind of freaky that you just said wastewater facilities. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
So he's now in like Pennsylvania doing big wastewater facility deals,
Okay.
right? Is that what you
No.
said? No, that's what
So
you
so
said,
my
right?
dad's North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So my dad, he just recently sold off the company. My parents are both retired now. And I grew up with that mentality, right? From the age of 7 to, 18, it was entrepreneurial based household. It was business all the time, talking business. And it was very, I grew up in a very structured home. And so from that perspective, it was always at one point it was supposed to be me taking over the company. So it was almost kind of being molded into a leadership role from, when I was 16, 17, 18, to be able to take over the company by the time I was 23 or so. So that was always a mindset. And so I had to view things in many ways from a leadership standpoint. And that translated in a lot of ways to, my current time in the Air Force. And, even now kind of translates from that experience to fraction mining and the leadership role that I fulfill in the company.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like your parents are great people and they raised you right. So I love seeing that. And then the military as well probably adds a lot to your discipline and maturity levels. Whereas when I was 24, I had just finished partying my way through engineering college and
Nice.
was trying to piece my life together. Anyway, it's fun to get some personal insight and details about the company owners and project leaders out here. It's not often in DeFi we get to hear personal anecdotes like that to really understand, who is stewarding your crypto potentially. So it's
Sure.
nice that you're fully doxxed, you're out here, you're a real person, and everything like that. I just wanted to throw in my dad. He was the principal engineer. He was a very successful engineer back in Ohio. One of
Okay.
the best, actually, won a lot of awards and stuff. And he was the principal engineer designing wastewater treatment facilities across the country as
Nice.
well, and also waste management facilities where they would burn the methane. They would capture and then transport and burn the methane gas to generate power on site. So it was a lot of the things you mentioned. It was like serendipitous. And I'm like,
Right.
what a coincidence.
Yep.
My dad has since passed, but man, he was
Mm.
a very brilliant engineer when it came to waste water treatment facilities and things like that. So very cool, man. I love to hear that story. Now let's jump right back into the project.
Sure.
So one other thing, you mentioned all these companies that are part of the GGFR. And here are some of the countries that have hopped on board.
Mhm.
I think there are actually 32 of them. Let me see. Yeah, let me scroll down a little bit more. There, so we don't see United States or Canada on here. And is that where you're going to be setting up these Bitcoin mining and these mining facilities on gas flares?
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity in the United States. We right now we're looking at the opportunity. Oh, there's Canada, right below
Oh,
or
okay,
right
yeah.
above Cameroon. Canada is definitely an opportunity for us. We have a site specifically that we're looking at in Calgary, there in Alberta. So Canada has a lot of opportunity up there, and there's a lot of opportunity stateside as well. So you've got opportunity, the one that we're looking at and exploring in Texas. There's plenty of opportunity and plenty of flaring that's happening in the United States. It looks like if you see down there, United States is joining in 2023. So, it's not really to my surprise, especially as there's a whole focus of going, green energy and something like that. To that extent, you've got additional countries joining, and I think overall, it's just a positive effect for the environment when you can take something that's most would consider to be damaging and you can clean it up and at the same time provide jobs, provide infrastructure, while at the same time, with Texas specifically, Texas having its own grid, ERCOT situation down there puts a lot of stress on the grid when they invite everyone to mine in Texas, put a bunch of strain on the grid while at the same time they can relieve a lot of that strain by looking at alternative solutions such as flare.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said Canada and the United States are joining in the GGFR in
Mhm.
2023, and that is where you will primarily be mining the Bitcoin on flare gas sites.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so that's your main market for this company, and then are you also like later on, say way down the road, potentially going to be looking to target Mexico since they're so close and connected by land as well? Are you going
Sure.
potentially for the whole North America region if it makes sense and you're looking to expand?
Right. Well, for us, primarily because one of our team members is in Canada, our chief operating officer. So, you
Okay,
know, he has a lot of insight. James knows a lot more about Canada. So it's nice kind of having that connection there, him having a bit more insight and knowledge. But there's really a lot of opportunities, even in Mexico. South America has a ton of flair. There's plenty of opportunities in South America, even. But when it comes to a lot of stuff in South America, you got to deal with governments, and it's
right.
always not always the best situation as far as from the government standpoint.
Absolutely. And that's I I appreciate your frankness on that issue. It does seem
Yeah,
like doing business in the United States and Canada for for your company is the least amount of friction and risk in some regards for that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting though to see how competitive it gets in the space. Um,
yeah.
so let's see. So, how would the governments, like the GGFR, like the World Bank, and all these countries that are jumping on the Global Gas Flaring Reduction Partnership, how are they going to incentivize oil and gas producers to mitigate gas flaring? And are there penalties or fines nowadays for gas flaring that you know of?
So that there are fines. It's oftentimes relative to the operation. If they don't follow certain guidelines and bylaws, there have been fines in the past, quite expensive before. So there definitely is penalties to not um, abiding to the proper processes. But as far as mitigation of that flare and the reduction of carbon emissions, I think it's going to be very similar to kind of what we see nowadays with what they're trying to do with um, taking gasoline vehicles off the road, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be there'll probably be more incentives, green energy incentives moving forward. Depending on you know government and who's in office and stuff like that, how much focus they want to put on green energy specifically, really just depends on that side of things. So it's hard to tell as to like what specific route or what specifically are they going to do to force companies to get away from flaring, because to many of them, they're just willing to pay the fine, right? They make enough money with the oil that they're just going to continue flaring and just pay the fines if for them it makes sense financially. So, I think there's going to be eventually to a point where it may be pushed more than it was several years ago, and I think a lot of that just depends on who's in office, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a crazy landscape with some of the environmental stuff and the global governance organizations like the UN, and then the countries joining these partnerships across the board in different arenas for environmental protection and things like that. Like you're saying with the gas cars, they're trying to phase
Yeah,
those out and go fully electric. But I
yeah,
I don't know about all that. Give me a 1991 Ford F-150 with a engine that, with minor maintenance, with parts that are everywhere still, you could keep
yeah,
running, half a million miles or more. It's just great technology that
sure.
I don't think electric can fully replace yet, especially when it comes to the distance that
Yeah,
a gas powered vehicle or diesel powered vehicle can go compared to an electric vehicle. Like
sure.
most EVs have like 300-mile range last time I checked for what most people would get, right? And
Yep,
there aren't places to plug into all around. So anyway, all right, off topic. Let's get back to it. So
sure.
with that all being said, are you able to put some kind of scrubbers on the exhaust of the gen sets, which are the generator sets for those who don't know,
Mhm.
to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to provide additional incentives to oil and gas producers to work with you by offsetting their carbon and methane emissions?
Yeah, so it really depends on the overall setup of the infrastructure itself, right? When it comes to setting up the infrastructure on one of these sites for the flaring process, the goal is because as you capture that natural gas, you put it through a generator that oftentimes captures a lot of the negative uh, portions of the natural gas. But on top of that, by the time that the exhaust is released, there's definitely opportunities to filter that out. The main process for a lot of these operations is primarily carbon neutral. So what that means is they're not really saving carbons, if you will, but or it's a very yeah,
Sequestering carbon.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it's like removing all the negative stuff, but there's still exhaust that's going to go into the air, right?
yeah.
But it's removing all the negative stuff primarily is the main focus. Now there are certain operations that are attempting to be carbon positive, which is just taking it like a whole extra, the extra 9 yards, if you will, for that. But that requires a lot more, specific on those type of operations.
Got it. How hard is it to set up a mining operation on a flare gas site?
Yeah, it's really not too difficult. You For the average setup, you primarily have to have a few things. One, you for us specifically, we're going with containers. You're gonna have the genset and then pretty much the hookup specifically. So, it really just kind of depends on the setup itself. There's really not too much to it. The nice thing is the partners that we're working with in Texas, they're the ones with that form of experience. And so, for us, we don't really necessarily have to worry about a whole lot of that. For us specifically, is getting the containers, which are we have a partner that we're sourcing those through, the getting the miners, and then primarily looking at the opportunities and finding these partners that we're able to work with. So, process overall isn't too difficult, but it is more intensive than just moving it into a warehouse that's run on grid. So there's
Yeah.
definitely a little bit more to it.
And is that do you think that's the main barrier of entry for other people looking to start similar businesses?
I think there's definitely it's cheaper to go just moving into an already set up warehouse. It's on grid. On-grid also is a bit more consistent. You have certain operations that if they don't have a Gen plus one, which that means if you have a generator, because they have to go through maintenance just like you maintain your car and your car's engine, got to change the oil and stuff like that. So there will be downtimes with these type of operations. Now, typically with what most sites like to see is a Gen plus one. So you have a gen that's always as a backup generator. So when you have one that's down for routine maintenance, you can kick the other one online and keep your uptime. The majority of flare sites, if they don't have a Gen Plus One, have a 80 to 90% uptime, which to be considered is not great. But if you have a Gen Plus One situation, you have it more in the 95% uptime guaranteed. So for a lot of people, if they don't have the Gen Plus One situation, it's not ideal, but there's pros and cons specifically from the energy cost with flare is one third, one fourth of on grid cost.
Wow. So okay, you get much better electric costs, and then over time, between the cost savings there and the potential rise in crypto prices in the next bull market, you're
Sure.
looking to come out profitable. That's
Oh yeah, the
yeah.
the margins are 100% nowhere near in the same like hemisphere when with the margins that you get from flare because like we discussed earlier, right? That flare is trash. It's like the saying, "One man's trash, another man's treasure."
Yeah.
That flare to that oil company is completely worthless. So if you're willing to come in and say, "Hey, we're going to pay you just a little bit," them earning anything is fantastic from something they consider to be completely worthless. So that's what where that opportunity really does involve and provide itself compared to if you're on an on grid, you're competing against the multifamily apartment complex versus the Bitcoin mining facility, right? So there's if both are on grid, you had this in Texas rolling blackouts. Bitcoin mining operations would have to shut down in order to have enough electricity. So there's pros and cons with both methods, but from a margin standpoint, especially during a bear market, flare is 100% the way to go.
Awesome. I agree. I think every oil and gas well needs to be capped with a genset container mining Bitcoin. I think that's the future, and I have for like 4 or 5 years now. When I first heard somebody mention it, and I'm like, that's the most genius thing I've ever heard. It's gonna change the world. And man, I love this stuff, man. This space is so cool. We're on like the bleeding edge of innovation across multiple sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the
Yeah.
thing is, those who fail to continue to innovate are the ones that are oftentimes left behind. And so when you see ExxonMobil continuing to innovate, there's certain
Mm.
reasons certain companies set themselves in a precedence ahead of others via methods of innovation. And ExxonMobil is doing that with Crusoe.
I totally agree, and I love being in the position I'm in to be a reporter in this space and to
Yeah.
make cool videos interviewing cool people like you and some of these other very creative entrepreneurs doing bleeding edge stuff like this. Now, let's jump into the nuts and bolts. Now that we understand the concept and the environmental, political, and some of the business landscape that you're operating in, let's jump into the blockchain Web3, or should I say Web5. I know you guys have been throwing around Web5 a lot lately in the tech
Yeah.
side of things. So, first off, what network is your project on?
Polygon makes it easy, makes it fast, and cheap. So
Yep, and Polygon is very cheap,
yeah.
like pennies or fractions of pennies for transactions, and
Yep.
it's EVM compatible, so you can port over your contracts and everything like
Mhm.
that, and use your same wallet address to have a Polygon address as well. So I like to hear that you're not doing anything too crazy. I can operate
Yep.
in this environment pretty easily, coming from like Binance Smart Chain, BNB Smart Chain,
Sure.
Avalanche, Phantom, and Ethereum. So good to know you're going to be on Polygon. And how many proof of work NFTs do you plan to mint, and how much do they cost?
Yeah, so when we're launching each individually, for specifically for the one that's coming up, is the Bitcoin NFTs. So we're only going to have 2,500 Bitcoin NFTs, the cost of which is $300 each. The reasoning behind the cost is one, it's a fairly low barrier to entry. And it specifically is designed to meet what's considered a MOQ in the ASIC miner or the distributor industry, a minimum order quantity. So if an individual is purchasing an ASIC miner retail cost, they're purchasing one unit versus getting the typical business cost when you can reach a MOQ of 100 units or 200 units or 300 units, you get much better rates and opportunities. So based on the pricing structure, it allows us to maximize opportunities within the MOQ space with our partners and get exceptionally ridiculous rates on ASICs.
Awesome. And I know you work closely with big industry players. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've got a connection stateside. We've got two opportunities primarily, right? So we've got a connection stateside with a partner when Compute North went bankrupt. That specific partner of ours has access to a portion of their liquidation cells, so them having to liquidate miners and stuff like that. Some brand new, some used. Those are being offered to us pretty much pennies on the dollar. So it's a really, really good opportunity for companies that are setting themselves up for the future of cryptocurrency mining to be able to take advantage of opportunities like this. Like I've mentioned, specifically just on my channel, I think this is simply the beginning. If Bitcoin was to stay around these prices, since many are either operating in the negative right now due to where everything is, network difficulty, or they're barely breaking even. So we're probably going to see more companies file for bankruptcy, more liquidation of miners, some that have like 26,000 miners that were purchased that they still haven't received in full, that they're having to say, hey, we need to send all these back because we can't afford to purchase them. So, there's a lot of opportunities there. We do have, or I specifically had the opportunity to speak with Michael Leo, who is a part owner of Bitmain. He's really good friends with the founders of Bitmain. He and I had a couple of conversations in regards to specifically when they launched the KA3. He had invited us to apply to their pre-mine of the KA3, the most recent Cadena miner. We were in a company setting yet to be able to be involved at that form of participation at that level. But there will be opportunities down the road as there's more ASICs launched by Bitmain, where that opportunity does exist, where we can kind of get in on the ground floor through our connections there.
That's awesome. So, if you are watching this and you've seen my previous AMAs with other hashing, power, sharing, NFT type projects,
Mhm.
they are, they discuss similar issues and things you got to think about, like the minimum order quantity, prices for these ASICs. When can you get the newest ASIC miner? And
Sure.
because, like you said, if you can get in early, then the the difficulty rate it stays low, and the profitability is like sky high for those people who get in early with like the newest tech that
Yeah.
basically makes the previous generations of the ASICs obsolete, like the
Yep.
KA3s did to the
Mhm.
KA6s, as our friend James Pelton found
And
out.
Katie. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
he he KA6 to found out. That should
Yeah.
be a new meme. I'm gonna make that later with James Pelton's face on it. It's gonna be great.
There you go.
Now I feel bad for him though, because that happened to him, and he's a it was a very educational experience watching him go through that, buying
Yeah.
the ASIC miners for the KA6s in the bull market for like 50 grand a pop, and then everything crashes, and he's like, it's not profitable for him with those because the
Mhm.
KA3s just came out now. So he's like, that, and that is one of the reasons I see here for the maintenance cost and the configuration and management you have here. If you just purchase the hardware, it's very difficult to do it right and to time
Yeah.
everything right, and you probably don't have those business relationships with Bitmain, for instance, to get in early on mining as soon as those things are as soon as they come out. So that's why I
Yeah,
love these types of projects, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great point there, Alex. The thing is, you're always gonna have there's always someone out there that's bigger than you are. This specifically Gold Shell with their KD6 and then their KD Max.
Right.
When the KD Max was selling for 50,000, $40,000 a year ago or
Yeah,
so.
that's what he had. He had the KD Maxes,
Yeah,
right?
KD Max, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you think about that having 40.2 terahash, and you think Bitmain comes out with something 4 times as powerful, and you just think the implications of something like that, and like you said, it made the KD Max pretty much obsolete at this point. And so if you, for example, for James specifically and other individuals, that I've spoken to Voscoin, right? He bought um, Cadena miners from Gold Shell, right? So you're going to have people all the time that purchase miners, and typically every 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 years, depending on the popularity, you're going to have something better, newer that comes out, and you don't want to be the person or the individual that buys, a $40,000 miner, even in a bull market, right?
Yeah.
A $40,000 miner, something comes out 4 times as powerful, making yours obsolete. So not only are you earning less, you can't get the same resale value for that same miner.
Now they once they're obsolete, they're basically paperweights. Like at
Yeah,
least GPU mining, in my opinion, which I like GPU mining because they have resale value, and if you put it in a gaming computer, you can really recoup your costs even if you just had to like liquidate immediately. Whereas the ASICs, you have to ROI basically on it in a certain fast time frame before the next tech gets released, and you never know when that's going to be because these businesses are always competing to make the next best thing. And like the KA3s, I think they're even more energy efficient too. So they're
100%.
like they're 4 times more powerful in hashing, and they take less energy to do it. It's just like, okay, how do you compete with that? I don't want to manage that. Like in terms
No,
of mining, I'm a hobbyist, right? I have
right.
a couple GPUs, and I barely have time to mess with that, but I do it for fun. But if I were to buy an ASIC miner, get the 220-volt circuits, and like try to manage that all myself, and then like I would really have to be ready to only put in what I'm willing to lose, just like anything out
Yeah,
here in crypto and DeFi. Like I tell everybody, even
right.
mining operations where you think, oh, this is like real world revenue. I have infrastructure, I've got a miner, and I'm doing this. It's super high risk still. This stuff is brand new and it's changing so fast. So I would rather outsource that to specialists like what your project is, and also the other
Mhm.
projects I've interviewed on my channel, and outsource that via these NFTs. So I'll just like get a couple NFTs from each of these projects doing this, and then I'll
Mhm.
be diversified kind of in this sector of DeFi and
Sure.
crypto that I personally like, without all the hassle and the mess of trying to stay up on the ASIC miner tech and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Like I want you guys to take care of that for me, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, and that's
So
the thing. I
yeah.
was just looking at the numbers. The KA3, the profitability of the KA3, 166 terahash, 3154 watts, and the KD Max sits at $1.35 per day, right? If you look at, you spent, $40,000 on something that, only gives you $1.35 per day, that would
Ugh.
take you 29,000 days to recoup that investment, which
Yikes.
is 81 years, if my math's correct. I don't think
Yikes.
most people, that's the lifetime of an average person, right? That's kind of the mistake you don't want to be involved in. Now, mind you, yeah, we're in a bear market. So,
Yeah, yeah.
that their profitability, if Cadena goes back up, is going to increase. But that just kind of gives you a perspective that, you know, goes to show you also that of all times to buy ASICs is now, right? The same miners that we're talking about that we're scooping out for pennies on the dollar costed 10, 12, $15,000 a year ago today. So, you have to also think of perspective of when you can buy everything on a massive, massive discount, right? And that's kind of why we were wanting to take advantage of the opportunity that's available now.
Yeah, and if you look at the last bull market, Kadena reached a high of like $27.73 around there, and
Yeah.
the price is 91 cents right now. So over 27x is where it was in the bull market. So
Mhm.
if you bought during the bull market, yeah, your profitability is going to go to like $1 a day, like you said. And but
Mhm.
if you are stacking it and you speculate that
Yeah.
Kadena is going to go up in the next bull market, maybe to similar or higher levels, or even conservatively, maybe half that. Maybe let's say it goes to
Sure.
$10, right? And you're holding a ton of
Yeah.
Kadena that you mined around these prices. Then when you sell it $10, that's a 10x right there just on the Kadena price alone. So things to
Right.
keep in mind, but obviously Kadena has to succeed. It's a newer protocol, but it's very promising tech if you've looked into it. Very cool blockchain that scales and becomes more efficient as it scales and grows. So the more people using it,
Yeah.
and the more transactions going on it, the more efficient and cheaper it gets to use.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why the difficulty rate goes up drastically, I think, as adoption grows. So
Yeah.
like there's like a golden age of Kadena mining, and that's in this
Mhm.
growth stage,
Yeah.
this infancy and adolescence as it goes on the beginning of that S curve, peaks, and then it's gonna, you know, even out with that difficulty rate where profitability will probably drop to similar
Yep.
levels. I'm guessing. I'm just speculating. I'm making this up. It could go to like difficulty levels like Bitcoin or Litecoin right
Yeah.
now, and then it would be similar profitability. Uh,
Sure.
yeah. So cool. I love that topic too, and I want to bring you on my live show at some point just to talk about that kind of stuff. There's
Yeah.
so much we can deep dive into on DeFi money and everything else. Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Check it out, everybody, on my channel. But I would love to have you as a special guest because you're so
Sure.
knowledgeable on this topic. So, um,
Absolutely.
now let's run through some of these other kind of risk-based questions and operational questions. So how many of these Bitcoin NFTs do you plan on minting in this first batch?
So just going to be 2,500 in the first batch.
Okay, and that if is that the minimum you need? Do you have to mint out all 2,500 to get the capital for your minimum order quantity that you mentioned earlier?
No, so the nice thing is with our connection, with our partnership stateside with the company that we're working with that's getting access to liquidation at Compute North, there's a lot of opportunity. For us, even if we were half, let's just say, worst case scenario, we minted half that, or even a fourth of that. For us specifically, because our partnership is so good with that in a specific company, we're not at similar kind of restraints for the MOQs, but obviously, the more MOQs that we have, the more that we purchase from them, the stronger partnership we gain with them. They see, obviously they're going to see more revenue as we buy miners from them. That helps us down the road when we look at it.
Absolutely. So you're shooting for 2,500 NFTs, and you said you could mint half of those and still be more than secure on the raise that you
Yeah.
need for the minimum order quantity to get the really low prices that you are hoping to get through your connection at Bitmain, right?
We do have a connection at Bitmain. For us, we're looking at a stateside opportunity. Right now, we're going through contract details. We're getting ready to sign an NDA with them specifically, so I won't be able to talk a whole lot about it. But the nice thing is, Bitmain is always available, right? The thing is, we're dealing with tariffs at that end, and there's a lot more, shipping details. But when we can get liquidation opportunities stateside, in our back door, if you will, our backyard, that for us is the better opportunity right now.
Interesting. So you're taking advantage of these liquidations to get
Yeah.
super cheap miners because they're not profitable because their electric costs are too high, but you guys are going to be much more profitable because you're going to have extremely cheap electricity costs using flare gas, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I love it. So let's hope it pans out, because I'm excited about this project. I want to see this succeed. So there's my personal bias. Anybody listening, I don't shill or like pump anything, but I do like projects from time to time, and this is a project that I do like, and I like to be transparent about that in case I come off as excited, right? So if I come off as excited, that's what my bias is. I like this project. I'm probably going to get in on it in some way. Yeah, so with all that being said, where will the NFTs trade on the secondary market after you're done minting them?
Yeah, for us, the most simplest solution is OpenSea. So that's the one that we've looked at. It's the most well known.
Yeah.
So for us, that's probably going to be the first solution. Long term, with our developer Joshua Belk, he is phenomenal. You look at his LinkedIn profile; he has an extensive expertise. Long term, as we envision it, we'll have a marketplace within the website itself. So we'll have an opportunity for trading the NFTs and buying NFTs within the same website.
Yeah, if you're watching this, you want to learn more about the team, they're all fully doxed. Go check out Josh's profile here, and it's a very impressive LinkedIn profile. I could tell you, as a senior full stack developer and software engineer myself, his background on LinkedIn looks correct, I should say. It's impressive, but it's as a fellow software engineer, everything on there checked out in my experience with what I know from working in the industry as a full stack software engineer. So yeah, I looked it over. It would be very weird for him to try to craft that. But
Sure.
I googled him. There's a lot of information out there. This guy, he's a very well known developer. So that's cool. Check him out. Check out the rest of them too. Talk to him in the Discord server. I'll post a link in the description to go to the Fraction Mining Discord server to talk with them. Also, Natosha, she's great. She's actually one of the moderators in my Discord server and Telegram server. I've known Nat now for many, many months. When she first came into the space earlier this year, we became quick friends, and she's been super supportive and helpful. So I'm so glad to see her helping out on your team as a communications manager. She is excellent at that. And yeah, so go say hi to Nat in there. And if you want to check out my Discord server, you can join my YouTube membership on the channel below. It's like $15 a month, and you can join my private Discord server. It's got a bunch of big players in the space. Very cool place. We talk about everything. Alex from Tactical Investing is in there, and
I am. Yep.
yeah, I got a bunch of other project owners, great community members, supporters, and all sorts of people in there. It's almost 200 people now. It's a great place to hang out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you guys have a lot of help. So your community is very interesting. I heard about you actually very long ago from Chewy. He
Yep.
reached out to me long ago just to talk about projects. And he's like, hey,
Mhm.
do you watch tactical investing? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes. He's like, what do you think about fraction mining? And I'm like, hey, I don't know. I don't have time to research more projects right now. I'm so busy.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, you guys just kind of like approached me about it. I'm like, wait, I remember somebody telling me about that. I've been talking with Chewy. He's a good guy. Go check him
Yeah.
out. All right. So all that being said, where's the team from? I guess we'll cover that while we're on this topic. Where's the team from country wise?
Yeah, so everyone's in the United States. James, as you can tell by his beard, is from Canada. So no, so the nice thing is, so I've personally known Major. He's our business to business contact. So when we're working on our business to business subsidiary or fraction mining, he and I go back to 2019. So he and I have known each other for a while. But I've met Major, I've met with Joshua, I've met with both Josh and Joshua. We've got two Joshes on the team. Mike Boom's been part of my community for the last year and a half. James is someone I've known for the past year or so. So the nice thing is, I've had sat down dinner, spent time with the developer. Me, Josh, and Josh all went down to tour a specific flare facility in Louisiana. So that's the nice thing is we've actually met. We a lot of us have met together. We've sat down. We've had dinner together. We've gone toured facilities, which is really nice. Joshua Belk and James, they know each other for a very long time. A lot of people know James from House of Obsidian. He is one of the and part of the investigation team there. And the nice thing that when I approached individuals, Alex, within fraction mining, it was they're all business people. That's the thing, and I think it's something that's lacking a lot in the crypto space specifically. Is you have people that don't know how to run a business. You look at James Maloney; he owns his own electric company, has a successful electric company. Joshua and I, or Josh and I, has a successful flooring company. Joshua Belk has had successful e-commerce brands and e-commerce companies in the past. So these are all people experienced in business, people that know how a company's supposed to be run, and that level of experience is what drove me specifically in the likelihood of bringing this kind of team together. And each one specifically, Josh and I having a lot of experience in mining itself, James from the electric side of things, and then obviously Joshua Belk as far as from the senior development and the techie side of things.
Very cool. It always makes me happy to see so many doxed team members. This man, this space, like you were saying with James being on the House of Obsidian's KYC investigation team. I have worked closely with Taylor Funk, Matthew Walker, James on previous investigations for projects that I did video work with and was closely, kind of, I was very close to the community and had my finger on the pulse what was going on with, it was the whole, which one was this? This was the Liquid Capital debacle. Or no, this was, I think this was, Liquid Capital and Orbital decks. And I helped them, I volunteered to help them with the Orbital decks passing off to the next project that would adopt it, right? Anyway, so I like those guys. They're straight shooters. That's cool that you have James on your team. So with all that, everybody is from United States or Canada, so tier 1 countries. Are you guys KYC'd? Does it matter since you're all doxed and in the tier 1 countries?
Yeah, for us, really, when you've got our first name, you've got our last name, it's pretty simple to do background checks, for us that have the LinkedIn profiles that exist. So, for us, there's no point. Like KYC is obviously if you want to hide behind a JPEG, right? And oftentimes what you'll find out from, projects I've known in the past, those that typically KYC, there's oftentimes a reason why they don't want people to know who they are. Whether that's something in their history they don't want dug up. There's usually a reason. You don't usually just hide your face just to hide your face, right? Unless you just like monkey JPEGs for some reason. But I mean, hey, to each his own. For us, that was one of the things that as I brought them on to the team, I said, hey, if you guys aren't, extensive background experience, you'd be perfect fits. But in many ways, one of the contingencies is you have to be 100% doxed, first name, last name, and profile picture on the website. If that is not something that you're comfortable with, if that's not something you're willing to do, then this project's not for you. And that was one of the biggest contingencies for me specifically, going and finding people that wanted to change a narrative within even the crypto space of how projects should be approached.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to do business, and there's not enough of it, strangely, in the space. Everybody's got their reasons, like you said. But yeah, that's fine. You could Google all of them, and they, at least Alex and Josh and Nat and James. I don't know the other. I didn't look up the other people yet, but I know them all. You guys are all doxed, and I believe you guys, who you say you are, on the internet at large. And also, as a YouTuber like yourself with 81,000 subscribers, go subscribe to Tactical Investing on YouTube. His channel's great. I've been watching it for over a year, actually. And you can learn a lot of cool stuff about trading stocks and crypto and the news about what's going on. Anyway, you're super public, super docs. You're a big public
Yeah, it's
figure,
hard for
right?
me
So
to hide
you're used to it.
who I am, right?
Yeah,
So,
I had to get used to it
yeah.
too, and it can be tough. I get some people's hesitation in this space where it's kind of crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now, with that being said, how is the team compensated by the project or the company? That's a big question on people's minds when it comes to new projects.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the breakdown of the reward structure. And so the 70% of the rewards go directly to NFT holders. 24% goes into the development, which allows us to constantly increase the hash rate, or as new miners come around, allows us to upgrade to things that are newer, more efficient, more um, rewarding, if you will. And then 6% goes to team and partners. Now, that specifically is broken up by 3 and 3%. So
Okay.
there are the team itself is getting 3%, and that's simply from the project aspect itself. Now, the other 3%, as far as partners, is specifically YouTubers and individuals in the YouTube space that I personally know, that I've connected with, that I think would align very well with fraction mining and our values. So currently, based on certain individuals that we have agreed partnerships with, we're across all socials, we're probably at about half a million. That sounds like a lot. Like 500,000 followers, subscribers, if you will. And that's solely from the ones that are agreed to be involved in one way or another. Now, there's other individuals that want to be involved, but maybe not, at the current times. So as more as more developments continue to evolve, as we start to launch, you'll probably start to see under the team member page, you'll start to see YouTubers and individuals that you're probably familiar with. They're like, oh wow, so and so is partnered up with Fraction Mining. Oh, so and so, I watch him too on YouTube, or I follow him on Twitter, whatever it may be. You'll end up finding quite a few individuals that you're probably well aware of in the crypto space. Now, the team, the one thing that when we created the project, because for me it's more of an opportunity to give back more than making this a cash grab, if you will, or an opportunity to do extremely well very early on. And the way that I told the team is, I said fraction mining and the rewards fraction mining and the team compensation is specifically going to be developed as we are fully launched. So by the time that we are, completely built out, that's when we'll truly start to realize the value that we've built. Right. This isn't something where we're starting off and we're making insane amount of money. The beauty behind fraction mining is there's that drive to continue to grow and develop long term. So that's kind of what we're doing behind the scenes. That's kind of what we're focusing on. And that's the 3%. The focus was to give back as much as we could to the community. So if you look at the numbers, 94% of the rewards go back to the community in one way or another. Now, the other form of revenue generated for the team is through the memberships. The membership NFTs specifically, those cost $25 a year. They have multiple different features specifically. The primary purpose for those is for team compensation. We have 7 team members. That is going to only continue to grow as fraction mining as a company continues to grow. And so there will be a form of having to compensate individuals, technicians that are at our sites for the growth of the company. But in addition to the membership NFTs, it also gives us the Web 5 access aspect, which we may talk about as well, where you host all of your different wallets all within one specific NFT, which makes it very, very unique. It's something that's way above my head. That is something maybe you're familiar with a little bit more
Yeah.
as a developer out. But
I've actually prototyped something like that out on a DApp where if you're
okay,
holding a specific NFT, then in your wallet, and that you
yeah,
connect to that DApp with that wallet, and the DApp would actually look and see if you had this NFT in your wallet,
Exactly.
this NFT type, and if you do, then it gives you authorization and authentication into
Yeah.
the private side of the web app, and allows you to
Yeah.
do stuff that you can't. It logs you in basically. It's
Right.
that's going to be
Yeah.
very
So
popular soon.
from what I've been told, it is a ERC 721A. So that's kind of my level of expertise on that specifically. Obviously, once we get to contract audits, all that's going to be as far as information there is going to be public. So that will be coming soon as well. But as far as the membership back to the membership NFT, the $25 yearly, majority of that value is for paying the team as far as compensation. In addition to that, that also gets you access into the fraction mining ecosystem, primarily through gives you access to wholesale costs for miners. I mean, when you're talking about saving $1,000 for an ASIC to spend 25 to save 1,000, it's a no-brainer for a lot of
Hmm.
people. In addition to it gives you access to down the road when we're looking to launch hosting, where you bring your own miner kind of thing you want to host with us. There's going to be value added there. And then for those that like the merch will be solely exclusive to fraction mining membership NFT holders. So we try to derive as much value from the membership NFTs outside of showcasing that this is a way for a sustainability for the team.
Why does it say here once memberships completely sell out, the subscriptions are final for that year. New memberships will not be available until the following year. Why are you limiting those?
Yeah, so the memberships themselves have a year-long duration, right? So the way that we've designed it is there is going to be a limit to memberships. Now, there right now, whether that limit is going to be 50,000 memberships, whether that is going to be 100,000 memberships, we want to always have a consistent scarcity factor that people say, "Oh man, I'm not a member of Fraction Mining. I want to be a member," and there's that kind of feel to be involved in a form of drive behind that. There's been other projects in the past that you could only get involved if you had like a friend of a friend of a friend, right? So we want to drive that community aspect, but the memberships themselves, when you buy a membership for when we launch, it's going to be for the year of 2023. New memberships for 2024 won't be available until that year's over.
Okay, and that I kind of understand better now. So that also drives demand on the secondary marketplace. So that way there
Yeah,
will be some kind of a liquid market
yeah,
for people if they do want to sell those membership NFTs.
sure.
That then they'll be able to if they wanted to recoup that cost, or if the prices appreciate on them. Who knows? Like if it's $25 to mint, they all mint out, and then people are trying to get them. The price could
Yeah.
go up and for resale value. All right, good
It-
to know. And let's see. Do you have any insurance or warranties on this equipment that you're going to buy?
Great question. So that's one of the things that we are working in getting quotes on multiple different aspects. There's several companies that we've gotten quotes from. The equipment and everything to that extent will be insured. It's just kind of sourcing which insurance is going to be best fitting for a crypto operation. You'll find that there's very few out
Yeah.
there that do this specifically for crypto. So we're definitely looking at the different options available, but insurance will definitely be involved.
Okay, and that's another barrier of entry to this space. You gotta there's some luck involved, and you gotta know how to keep the machines going. Because
Yeah,
if they go out, that's a hefty expense if there's not good options for insurance or warranties on them. Uh,
yeah,
so, are your smart contracts that you'll be using, like that ERC 721A and all that stuff, are they audited? And if so, by whom?
yeah. So we're gonna do two types of audits. So we're gonna do an internal audit, and because of the simplicity of the contract itself, we're looking at a lot of options. Right now, we're in the process of getting quotes from multiple different companies. I don't think that because it's not to an extent of a lot of these projects within the DeFi space and the complexity oftentimes associated to their contracts. it's not going to be as intensive. So for us, we're looking at what's going to be the best approach for the community. And it really is simple. So there will be an internal audit. That's fairly simple to do. The contract audit itself, there's multiple different companies out there. Not one specifically. It's kind of like a Coke versus Pepsi, right? Everyone has their own flavor. Whether you use Hacken or you use some other service. There's plenty of auditing companies out there. The by far some of the biggest is obviously Certic and Hacken. But for us, because of the simplicity of the contract and us not trying to do anything, I would say that's I don't know. I don't think innovation is the right word, but it's not like
Dude,
something.
you're not doing anything experimental.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
Yeah,
not something that that requires certain form of expertise. It's pretty cut and dry. So
good.
there will be an internal audit. There will be an external audit. So that will be coming, and that will be public for individuals. So
As your developer Joshua Belk would probably agree, if you don't have to, don't reinvent the wheel because
yeah,
it's the way it is for a reason.
exactly, exactly.
And that's something I use. You have to think about all the time in software engineering. It's okay to reuse other people's code because it's been vetted and tested over many different ways. Anyway, do you have multi sigs or time locks on any of your smart contracts?
Yes. So we have a Gnosis multisig that is between the founders of the project. So that does exist. And we have proper setups and functions that would require individuals. And if in a worst case scenario, one of the individuals was to have a life emergency or some act of God, if you will, was to happen to that individual, we have the proper steps in place as far as still being able to function without an individual, if we were to lose an individual, if you will, from the team.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you have any kind of like continuity plans or anything like that in case any core team member left to go do something else abruptly, or like
Yep.
God forbid something happened, like
Right.
the proverbial beer truck they say, you
Yeah.
guys would still survive. Even like say, what if you got a great opportunity at the Air Force or something you could not pass up and you had to move on? Could you pass the torch to somebody else,
Yeah.
and would the project survive?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
All right, good to know. Let's see. Do you think your project would survive if this bear market continued for another year or two?
I think the main thing that you have to consider with the mining space, right, is it's that I forget the visual representation is you don't have to outrun the bear, you have to outrun the other person, right?
Mm,
So it's if you got a bear chasing you, you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than the next person. And
right.
so that's kind of where it is in the mining space, right?
Yeah.
It's the companies that have really what it boils down to is one, don't get in bad debt. That majority
Mm,
of crypto mining companies took out massive, massive amounts of loans back in November, which bull market, everybody was throwing around money everywhere, right?
yikes.
You could get a loan with little to no issue. And
Yeah.
the problem is they were getting loans based off of their profitability at that point during the market, and they weren't preparing for what lied ahead. And so a lot of these
Mm,
companies are either going bankrupt on two aspects. Compute North was because of rising electric costs. Core Scientific and some other companies such as Iris Energy are on the verge of bankruptcy or going through situations financially because they took out loans that, from a profitability perspective, they're not able to pay back anymore. So they're having to liquidate their miners and stuff like that. So
yeah.
when we look at our operation, one, we're getting in at the is this the Bitcoin bottom? It could be. It may not be. Could we head down lower? Sure. But it's the companies that are going to outrun, quote unquote, the bear in this perfect scenario. And the companies that have lower margins are going to be ones shutting off their equipment much sooner. If you've got a shutting down of equipment, then you have a readjustment of the Bitcoin network difficulty. We're looking at just December, a change of anywhere between 1 to 10% of a drop in Bitcoin network difficulty. If we've seen the numbers from the hash rate has decreased nearly, I think it's about 28.6% since its all-time high, October 31st. And so you're talking about in the course of a month, that's how much has dropped off because so many either one, can't afford to pay back their loans, they're having to liquidate miners, or two, their margins are just so terrible because of higher electric prices, they're having to shut down operations because if they're losing money, it's better to not make money than just to lose money every single day, right? And some are having to make that decision. So for us, when you look at the question of are we able to survive in the next bear market is how many other companies are able to operate at the margins we will be operating at, and based on certain operations it's very feasible for us to be profitably mining Bitcoin, sub $8,000-$10,000 Bitcoin. And you have to look and see how many companies out there are able to do that, and you end up with a list of very, very few.
Hmm.
So with the opportunity that's available, and the prospect that we have, if we get full advantage of what's available to us, based on just one situation and solution in Texas, it really does allow us, if you will, to outrun the other mining companies in the bear market when it's chasing us.
Great answer. So yeah, very detailed. I won't even reiterate. It's you guys have a very high competitive advantage with the cost of doing business with the flare gas mining. With that being said, are you going to lease out space in your containers at the flare gas sites to other companies to generate additional revenue for your business?
Sure. So we've had conversations with several companies. There's a and right now all it is primarily is just conversation. There's nothing in agreement. There's nothing signed. There are certain discussions that are further along than others. We had a discussion with a hedge fund that we were connected with that has $400 million of assets under management, that is interested in a hosting opportunity. That is a jackpot opportunity for fraction mining if it does come to fruition. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the one that's I would say further along in discussions, they're a very well-known brand in the United States. They are looking for a form of exposure to Flare and looking for potentially 10 megawatts of hosting at our location. So,
Dang.
for us, that's a fantastic opportunity to give a form of exposure. And mind you, this is a very small part of their overall operation. So, majority of their hosting is in one way or another on grid. So as those contracts expire, if we have the opportunity to bring them onto an environmentally friendly and a better margin operational hosting site, there's a lot of opportunity long term down the road from that aspect. So for us,
Yeah.
the business to business aspect of fraction mining is phenomenal. There really is a platform that's being set up and showcasing to companies that if like we mentioned earlier, right? Those companies that fail to innovate are going to be the companies left behind. And if these crypto mining companies, your Riot, your Marathon, your Bitfarms, your Hut 8, you start naming the companies. If they don't transition to look at the technology that exists today and where the technology is going to be in the future, they're going to be the ones falling behind. And if we can be the solution to keep them ahead of everyone else, then those are solutions that they're going to want to take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. You just explained some of the B2B, business to business side of fraction mining, and it sounds like there are different business arms of your company. So, will the B2C, the business to consumer participants, like me or maybe potentially somebody watching, if they were to participate in your project with one of these proof of work NFTs, would they
Sure.
get benefit from your B2B deals with these large companies in some way, or is that completely separate from the B2C retail NFTs?
Yeah, so they're going to be separate functions. So it's going to be under a separate subsidiary. Now,
Mhm.
the benefit that we have with the revenue potential, if we have B2B partners, is we're able to take the revenue from that, and with our kind of 5 year timeline, is to be the a company that owns the infrastructure rather than having to lease the infrastructure. And when we can own everything ourselves, you're talking about the margins even being twice as good almost if you own the infrastructure versus rent slash lease the
Mm.
infrastructure or a rent to own situation. So long term, the value that's going to be derived from the business to business will be able to benefit the B2C side of things simply from the owning of the infrastructure, bringing up the margins.
Okay, so there is a benefit in a roundabout way where
Yeah,
you'll be able to own all of that equipment, like the gen sets, which are extremely expensive. You'll be able to own
yeah.
that stuff a lot sooner, and those can be used across multiple containers. Is that right?
Yeah, so it really just depends on the type of genset that you get. I mean, you can get a genset that's a megawatt. You can get a genset that's 10 megawatts. So there's a lot of opportunities. There's different brands. There's certain ones that we prefer to work with. That if we go and sign contract details with, they are stateside. They're based out of Texas. Really, really reputable, good company. And for us specifically, the way that we envision it is the containers themselves, with the containers that we're using, use about a megawatt's worth of energy. So it's just going to be kind of making sure that we have a structural setup that is conducive to energy efficiency alongside of a uptime efficiency as well. So there's a lot of opportunities that way, but yeah, the gen sets are very expensive, but they last a very, very long time.
All right, good to know. I think that'll be important as we're looking at what potentials we can expect as NFT holders. So with that being said, do you have any estimates or projections? I know you can't guarantee any kind of returns, but
Yeah,
with I'm sure you've made some guesses on like the hashing difficulty and potential price of Bitcoin, Kadena, and Litecoin, and all of that. With this first
yeah.
batch starting out the gate with Bitcoin, do you have any estimates on what kind of hashing an NFT holder could gain rewards from?
Yeah, so the way that we envision it, if you look at simply the Bitcoin side of things, originally, and this was when we first started off, really, we were looking at anywhere between 6 to 12 terahash per NFT. Now, due to us getting access to liquidation cells, us getting to a lot of opportunities with even more capitulation happening in the miner space, it offers us better opportunities. So we're looking at the fact that we could have the opportunity to increase that hash rate. So we're looking at really pushing closer to 10 to 12 terahash per BTC NFT. And obviously, that's also going to be relative alongside of the Kadena NFTs and the Litecoin Doge merge mining NFTs. Now, from obviously the ROI perspective and the return on investment that people oftentimes like to talk about, our perspective is twofold, right? The first being that if you look at Bitcoin, you look at Litecoin, you look at Kadena, as of today numbers, if you put a KA3 beside a S19 XP, the KA3 will always profit you more money. It's simply in the numbers, 10 out of 10 times, right? But there's a level of risk to reward aspect to Kadena mining. It's not as established as Bitcoin is, so you have a higher risk to reward situation. Litecoin Doge merge mining is kind of like the Goldilocks. It's just right there, just right. You've got consistency. The network hash rate is not sporadically growing. You've got some form of consistency there, and it's been around for and it's very established. Litecoin is respectively. So having all three is a diversification approach to us as a company, and then to users on the back end from an individual standpoint. So that's kind of the first faucet of that. Now, secondly, when it comes to the NFTs themselves, you have to look at the comparison of having an NFT and the opportunities that come with that versus owning your own hardware. Do most people have $3,000 to spend into a miner that loses value as it ages and gets used? Do people have the ability that if the control board or if one of their hash boards goes down, to wait maybe several weeks to get a replacement? Do they have the capability to power this in their house? You know, if you're in an apartment, good luck. Your landlord's probably not going to have you run this loud thing in your apartment. Most houses probably have a 240 volt, but that's primarily for the dryer. So you know you have to have the electric cost of getting an electrician to install 240 volts. It's not crazy expensive, but it can be done. But that's just extra, right? So there's so many other barriers to entry of owning your own hardware, and really there's only kind of half solutions right now, with hosting companies that offer you to buy a miner, which still has that barrier to entry, but host at a relatively decent rate. But you're still dealing with at that point the devaluation as the miner ages. And like we talked about early on, is once a new, better, and improved miner comes along, yours specifically could be completely obsolete.
Right. Yeah. That's the biggest risk I see in these projects, or at least in trying to manage it myself. That's why it makes it easier if you got the experts. Now, you said you're looking at about 12 terahash per
And
NFT, 10 to
yep.
12. What website did you use to calculate that on? I'm on whattomine.com. Uh,
Yeah. So what to mine is a good one. Typically, we'll look at miner stat.
Miner stat.
Miner
Okay.
stat is pretty good. You've got quite a few. What to mine, personally, I've always used what to mine with GPUs, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, me
miner
too.
stat with ASICs. And you've got everyone. You've got ASIC miner value. You've got some of the other websites. The one issue that you'll have sometimes with ASIC miner value is it will pull APIs, from my understanding, from other websites that may not be completely updated. So sometimes you'll get some really crazy numbers on ASIC miner value. So you
Mhm.
do have to kind of just take everything with a grain of salt and utilize websites that are a little bit more up to date. But yeah,
How much? So 12 terahash. How much? If you had to estimate the power consumption per NFT, was it like 300? You said.
it's about 280, 290.
All right, let's just say 290. Let's be conservative here. And what electricity costs do you think would be? Do you guys get?
That's a tough one to answer.
Is that
I would say,
proprietary?
yeah, that until contracts are
Okay.
signed, you know, with that said, right? If we wanted to move in tomorrow, because this is public, because we have talked to Musk miners, great guys at Musk miners, love them to death, really, really cool. We've got a great relationship with them. For us, we wanted to kind of do our own thing, and we wanted a different approach and to the aspect. But if we wanted to move in tomorrow to Musk miners, we're at 5.9 cents all in. So, I mean, if you wanted to use that number, that's, I would say that's not even close to how good of a deal that we have in Texas. But that maybe gets you somewhere in the ballpark, right? And you also have to consider that, this $300 that you're spending is for one NFT. So if you consider the comparison of $3,000 for an ASIC versus $3,000 worth of NFTs, that's the real comparison that you can draw, right? So if you've got, for example, right, you're multiplying that by 10, you have 10 NFTs equaling to $3,000 for say, and that in and of itself, you look at the 24 hours, that in and of itself, if you're looking based on that calculator, would be, as far as estimated profit, $2.50 per day if you had 10 NFTs. Now you look at something like ASIC miner value, you go over to the S19. It's up there if you want to go over to it, and you look at the rewards for the S19. Let me go down here for the 110 terahash. Let me see how much you lose per day. Right now, you're losing $3 per day. If you have an electric rate of 12 cents, mind you, the average electric rate in the United States is 14. So the difference, if you had that situation based on that calculator, is you know losing money per day or the opportunity to profit per day.
Got it. And this is in bear market prices as well. So,
Yeah.
uh, do you guys plan on uh doing any kind of holding of the coins as long as possible, or are you gonna just like immediately so you're just gonna distribute? So if these are mining Bitcoin, are they just the rewards are just gonna be in Bitcoin, or how is that gonna work?
Yeah, so the rewards aren't Bitcoin. There is a 100% active requirement portion on the behalf of the NFT holder. This is not a sit back, relax kind of situation. You have to actively be involved within the project. So that specifically means that you have to go and actively claim your BTC mining rewards, right? So that in and of itself, you know, is what requires your form of involvement as an NFT holder. So the rewards are in BTC. When we launch KDA, the rewards will be in KDA, and the same thing applies elsewhere.
So that's and yeah, so you're gonna have to claim manually the rewards. It's not gonna be airdropped automatically to your
No,
Bitcoin wallet, right?
no,
So you're gonna go into your Polygon DApp and authenticate somehow with your membership NFT, and then it's
mhm,
gonna show what is sitting there ready to be claimed. Across all of your proof of work NFTs, like the Bitcoin NFT,
right,
the Kadena NFT, the LTC NFT, and then you're gonna
yep,
click a button, and that button will then trigger claiming that. Will that go then to your Bitcoin wallet and
yes, yes.
your
So
Kadena
that's
wallet and your Litecoin
the,
wallet
exactly
on
that's
those
the
networks?
on those networks. Yep.
Wow.
So that's the
Okay.
uniqueness of the membership NFT. That's the level of expertise that we have with Joshua Belk, and the Web5 aspect is you have all of your addresses solely within one NFT that allows you to claim in the underlying crypto asset, if you will.
Yeah, a lot of projects trying to do the hashing NFTs are struggling with that situation and how to figure out how to do that. So
Mm.
if Joshua came up with a good way to do that, that is awesome. I look forward to seeing how he does it. It'll be very cool.
Yep.
And the projections we were looking at earlier, you said this was that 5.9 cents per
Mhm.
kilowatt hour was based on that company that
Yeah.
recently floundered from
No, no, no. So that was the
or
5.9 cents is from Musk miners. So
oh, okay.
if we were to partner up with Musk miners, and like I said, we like Musk.
Okay.
We went and toured their location, Louisiana, had a great time with them. For us specifically, in our vision long term, we like the opportunity of the opportunity, if you will, that exists in Texas. And in Texas, the electric cost is much, much less than what you see at the 5.9 cents. For us right now, we just can't really disclose until the ink's dried as to what that is specifically. But you're looking at something much, much better than what's there, right?
I'm going to put
So
in random numbers while you're talking just to
yeah,
show what the profitability looks like. Because you're saying you're getting the electricity much cheaper than 5.9 cents to the point where other
mm,
big mining companies want to come and mine in your facilities because the cost savings are
yeah,
so good. So I'm just gonna just start putting like 1 cent less for each one. I don't know where
yeah,
you guys land on that. We'll have to wait for you guys to announce that information if you're allowed to at some point. But like four
sure,
cents in 30 days at current BTC prices, which is bear market, it's like twelve
right.
dollars a month. If you go down to three
Yeah.
cents, it's
And you could also do
14.
just to kind of showcase, if you put in 110 terahash, you put in 3250 watts at the average rate of 14 cents in the United States, and just kind of have that. And this is obviously without the pool fee, but everyone pays that. 14 cents, and that gives you a perspective of,
Oh, oh
yeah,
no.
that's the alternative, right? Is in
Negative
an aspect of
$142 a month. Negative. Now
Yeah.
I'm at 11 cents
So
here in Florida. I've got kind of fortunately to have somewhat cheap power relatively. But if I were to try this, it's negative
yeah,
$72 a month if I were to get.
yeah,
This is what the
yeah.
S19.
So yeah, so this is the S19. Now obviously it's not the XP. The XP is the newer, greatest model. But even even if you have the newest, best model, if you're looking at 140, it's relatively around 140 terahash. You're looking at pulling it up here, 30 10 watts. So you can plug in the numbers if you want.
Yep.
Um,
I'm
and
still
you
at
still
negative $3
exactly,
a month if
and
I were
that's
to
the
get
newest and
that.
greatest and best
Oof.
ASIC miner out there to mine Bitcoin, and you're still losing. So you kind of look at something like that, and you're like, you see the opportunity that exists elsewhere. Um, so just really depends on what you're doing out there, and the electric costs around the United States. There are countries that even Europe you might as well forget mining any form of cryptocurrency in Europe, because you've got electric rates, 20, 30 cents. So, we think we have it bad at 11 cents. For me in Kansas during the summer, it's at 15 cents. I think I have it bad. You just wait till you go to Europe and you see how bad it is there.
Absolutely. So for people in Europe and these other countries, this is completely off the table. Even if they had the latest and greatest, and were fortunate enough to be getting in on one of the algorithms or pools that's like the current most profitable. Like if you get into this one at
Yeah.
marketplace levels right now, it's $3.48 a day at 11 cents. So in Europe, that would never be profitable right now in this bear market. So that's why you're getting these liquidation events at these companies, and these companies are also looking for people and businesses like yours that are coming up with creative ways to get the electricity costs that are next to nothing, and all you have to
Yeah.
do is know what you're doing and be able to raise funds or get loans to do the capital, and then you have to have expertise to know what you're doing. Like this isn't
Yeah.
as we're showing. Like you have to really know this stuff. Now, if like somehow you get down to 1 cent with that 140 terahash, that's like $213 a month.
Yeah.
Not bad, but what are the costs of that? So let's go back to 12 terahash and 300 watts. Like if we were to get one of these NFTs at your current estimates based on the equipment that
Sure.
you're looking to purchase, um, if you're at, let's just say, 1 cent, that's like $18 a month. If you're at 2 cents, that's and this is not no guaranteed prices or reward. This is all based on a
Yeah.
ton of variables at any point in time.
100%.
So if
Yep.
it's at 2 cents with a 12 terahash per second per NFT and 300 watts per NFT, that's like almost $16 a month. And in terms of these projects I've been interviewing that do the hashing power sharing, that's
Mm.
extremely competitive. And that's actually along the lines of what these projects are getting with mining Kadena and sharing the hashing with the NFT holders. So
Mhm.
you're somehow and that's assuming electricity costs are like that dirt cheap, but like
Yeah.
if you're getting it for free from flare gas mining, I can only guess how low it could go,
Yeah. How low can you go?
but
Yeah. I mean,
still like
it's
it's
nothing.
yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of it also, Alex, you have to realize is that goes back directly into the breakdown of the reward structure. I'm familiar with multiple projects in this space are trying to do something similar. There's very few that you find that give 70% directly back to NFT holders and that give 94% back to the community.
Yeah.
I may have to go back on my word on this, but I'm pretty confident there's not one single company out there that gives 94% back to the community. If you find me one, let me know in the comments, right?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty confident on stating that fact, and that's why I think we can drive so much value to the end user and the individual.
Yeah, that's something everyone needs to consider with these projects is how much are they reinvesting into more newer ASIC miners and
Mhm.
further expansion of the facilities. Like that's like
Yep.
growing the principal balance
Sure.
of an investment account, right? Like it's an
Yep.
analogy I'm making. This is not an investment or an investment
Yeah.
account at all, by the way. Just for
Yep.
linguistic reasons. But as an
Yeah.
analogy, if you're growing like a trust fund and you're reinvesting a portion of the interest you earn, then that principal
Yep.
balance keeps growing, like your
Right.
401k or something, and then over time you're getting more and more per year back. Now with
Yep.
this, that you have 24% rolling back into future expansion and keeping up to date on the tech. So then 70% that goes back to the NFT members should be progressively growing over time per NFT for this specific Bitcoin operation. What's the timeline looking like for the release from the first batch of the Bitcoin miners to
Mhm.
the Kadena miners and then the Litecoin miners? What's the timeline look like currently?
Yeah, so the Kadena obviously was an opportunity, and then the Litecoin Doge is merge mining, so you mine both of those at the same time. So for us, it really just depends on where the KA3s are obviously going to be arriving in December, right? For a lot of people that purchase them. Now, we were invited to participate in the pre-mine with the KA3 alongside of Bitmain, like I mentioned earlier. But for us, we just weren't in a position to be able to participate. So we'll have to see kind of what the network impact is going to be once all of these KA3s are online, and see the opportunity that exists because the better prices you get on the miners, the more compute that you're going to have in the end. So if we have a better if we have to wait just a little bit because when it comes to Litecoin Doge merge mining, the prices of that is pretty consistent. It's the nice thing behind Litecoin Doge. The price of the miners doesn't fluctuate as much, and the profitability is pretty there. And so for us, within the launch, we're shooting for the spring timeframe of launching both Litecoin and Kadena. Now, obviously, they'll be launched separate months. So, if hypothetically we're launching, Kadena in March, we may launch, Litecoin in April or May. It just really depends on where the market is at that point.
Okay, so just to double check, Bitcoin will be coming out in. You said your Bitcoin miners will start becoming operational in December and January ish.
Uh, so that's when we're launching the NFTs specifically. Now, if
Okay.
you wanted to get them operational, we do have options to get them operational as soon as possible. But right now, we're looking at that Texas location because it really is a gem. And it's one of many would consider this to be a jackpot opportunity, if you will. So for us, that site specifically, there's a lot behind the scenes as far as Dallas Cowboys owner owns the oil company behind the scenes, right? So
Huh.
you've got a lot of pieces moving to the puzzle. So
Interesting.
for us specifically, we're wanting to wait as far as that location. It could be as early with the holidays. It's delayed a few things, but we're probably going to be looking at February-ish timeframe if we're to move into that location. Doesn't mean we don't have other locations available that we can move in tomorrow. We do. But for us, we're wanting to really key in on and focus on that one specifically.
All right. So uh, you're gonna try to lock down the Texas facility, and then if you get that, we're looking at March for the that to be deployed, and the Bitcoin miners, the ones you got are going to be operational around March. In the meantime, in Q1, you'll also be deploying the KDA and LTC NFTs, so people can start getting those ready. And
Yep.
then when are those? When would the devices be deployed in
Yeah.
that scenario for KDA and Litecoin?
Sure. So a perfect situation would be launching the BTC miners would be in the ground sometime in February. This is a perfect scenario, right?
Okay.
You always have to have some leeway, but that would be February. We can get the miners tomorrow if we wanted to. We can get the containers tomorrow if we wanted to. There's just a logistics portion. Cadena specifically would be launching the NFTs in March. Same thing with the Cadena. Once you have the hosting set up, it's really not too difficult with our partner in the United States for the acquisition of miners because there's really not a there is a demand to get rid of them obviously because they're having to find a way to liquidate these, but these are primarily Bitcoin. but there is still high demand for more profitable options. But there's fewer competitors for that specifically on a large scale. So for us, we do have an opportunity that, when we're talking about KA3s, by that point, we'd be able to, the Litecoin miners were able to get within 2 weeks if we wanted to. KA3 is a little bit more kind of iffy just because of where those are in their development. They're launching, their first batch ever is getting delivered in December. So we'll have to see kind of where things are at that point.
Okay, and I know you said you've got relationships and partners with these distributors. I also know a couple distributors that might have batches of KA3s on hand. If you want me to put you in touch with them so you can compare prices to just see if there are any ways to save additional money. Okay, now, so we're looking then at March. Once you guys are in that Texas facility, ideally, then March, the NFTs for Kadena and Litecoin will go up. Are you guys going to do 2,500 of each of those as well? And NFTs?
Yeah, great question. So we're evaluating the opportunity because from an energy consumption standpoint, with the containers that we're working with are 20-foot containers. Now, standard, those hold about 200 miners. We have a specific partner that's been able to engineer them to hold 250. So if you are already pre-consuming amount of energy for each of those containers, it would be in your best interest to use as much energy that's going to that container, if you will. So if we launch 2,500 NFTs of Kadena, we're limiting ourselves to about a quarter of that container being filled up. So we have 3/4 of the space not being utilized and going to waste. So for us, we're looking and evaluating at launching more Kadena and Litecoin NFTs simply due to the cost of the ASICs themselves. And that directly would correlate into right now, probably around 5,000 NFTs for Litecoin, 5,000 NFTs for Kadena. And that would push us to filling much larger portions of a container than we would have with just 2,500.
That's awesome. So you would get some economies of scale there, and then each NFT that you mint out, you get some, extra profitability in terms of like the hashing, and then that hashing gets distributed to the NFT holders. So the more NFTs there that you mint out in that and fill that container, the more hashing rewards you get per NFT. So it actually scales up. The more NFTs you guys mint out allows you guys to get more hashing power per NFT. So that's interesting.
There is opportunities because it does kind of play a role into that MOQ section, right? I mean, you're going to have the same thing if you have $100,000 to buy KA3s, or you have $500,000 to buy KA3s. There's obviously going to be a bit of a difference in the price aspect. Now, you buying a KA3 still gets you the same hash rate. So if we have, obviously, if there's 10,000 NFTs, it takes 10,000 NFTs to fill a container, then obviously that 10,000 NFTs then directly divide the overall hash rate. So it would still be, obviously, you'd probably get a slight bit more hash rate just because of the MOQ side of things, but it would still be relatively equal from the aspect of you have fewer NFTs, you have fewer people sharing the hash rate. You have more NFTs, more hash rate is then equally divided that way.
All right, good to know. Great explanation there. So with all that being said, when are you going to have any like period for like just strictly compounding? Like Hydro Whales did like 6 months with their Hydro Whale NFTs that they're compounding before any rewards get distributed. Are you going to allow rewards, this 70% of the rewards going to NFT members as soon as they're operational, or do you have some kind of payout schedule? What's it looking like in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the rewards get distributed as soon as the miners get in the ground. So there's not any waiting period of 6 months or several months kind of situation. That goes automatically.
And do they just accrue in real time in that claimable contract that you're going to have the DApp for, that you can then go claim it basically anytime then?
Yeah, so it's going to be based on the mining pool that we utilize. So typically, when you have an ASIC yourself, right, you have the hash rate. Typically, you don't solo mine, oftentimes, unless you feel really lucky. And so typically, you participate in
Yeah.
the pool, and you get based on the payout structure of the pool, or however you may set it up. With the pool that we're looking at, it automatically divides the hash rate on a daily basis, where 70% would go to this wallet, 24% of that wallet, and they would be separated automatically during the hashing process and after so much gets mined. So specifically, we will have a DApp built in. There isn't like a specific timeline that we're like saying, hey, the DApp is going to be built tomorrow. We focused in on primarily on the coding aspect because a lot of this is being built from the ground up. So for us, there will be a DApp where you are able to go in and directly actively claim your BTC mining rewards. But yeah, if you wanted to let it accrue over time, that's really up to you. If you want to claim it every single day, there's going to be a cost associated from that aspect from the Bitcoin network. So realize that is really up to you as to how you claim, and it's 100% your choice on the level of claiming that you want to do.
Got it. Okay. And with with that being said, thanks for that timeline. That's great. So I know we should probably wrap this up. So I just want to see if
Yeah.
there are any other uh big questions that I missed here. I typed up a whole bunch of questions over the past few days.
No,
Um
you're good.
so okay, this is kind of a subjective question. I have two kind of subjective questions here.
Yeah.
First off, what do you think is the best strategy for participants in your project? Not financial advice, obviously, but if you were to buy some of these NFTs off the market, what would your strategy be?
Yeah. So there's two strategies, if you will, right? If you go with me here. One, there's a diversification strategy. I'm always one to like diversification. It's one of the reasons that we price the NFTs at the price that they are. So if you're going in, there are projects out there that charge $1,000 for an NFT. If you were to get all three NFTs, you have exposure to all three different cryptocurrencies for the same price as one. So
Mm,
for me, if I was going into this, I'd want a diversification approach. I'd want some Bitcoin. I'd want some Litecoin. I'd want some Cadena. To that same aspect, you have your long term. You have the risk strategy aspect. For a lot of people, they're very little risk adverse. They want something that's consistent, and they know in the end that something that has less risk is going to be less rewarding. That's going to be your Bitcoin. You want the high
right.
risk, high reward opportunity. That's going to be your Cadena. And then if you're someone that just likes kind of be in the middle, just be a little lukewarm, if you will, then you're going to go with the Litecoin route. So if you're in it to try to make as much as you can, then at current price points, at current hash rates, at current numbers, Cadena is going to be more profitable. But who's to say where we're going to be in 5 years? Who's to? I mean, Cadena hit $28, a year ago.
Right.
Before that, Cadena wasn't really that profitable to mine. All of a sudden, people were
Yeah.
making $100, hundreds of dollars per day. So,
Jeez.
could a project solely based on Cadena mining do extremely well? Yes, but there is a risk aspect that if, for example, I don't think Cadena has any plans to go proof of stake. But if you had a scenario like Ethereum's been wanting to go proof of stake for a long time. But if something to the likes of Ethereum was to happen, with any other layer one or other proof of work cryptocurrency. I don't think that's ever a concern with Bitcoin. But with other altcoins that are mineable, there's always that form of risk. And that's probably the riskiest aspect of fraction mining. And I'm not afraid to say, there is that risk that an altcoin goes around of proof of stake. And those miners, you looked at the massive E9s, the ASICs that were costing $10,000. Those are nearly completely worthless. You had people spend tons of money on those. And the E9 right now, if you were to look at the numbers, I'd have to see it. Um, yeah, the E9 makes 44 cents a day, right? Because it
Jeez.
really only mines Ethereum Classic that's profitable. So you spend 10,000 to mine something that's 44 cents. And that's one of the problems, one of the risks you have with ASICs is they are designed to mine a specific algorithm. They're not like GPUs where Ethereum turned off and then you went and mined Flux, Caspa, which is popular now, Raven, Ergo. You had so many other options. So
And then they all got diluted with all that hashing
yeah,
power going.
exactly.
I watched Nice Hash, that auto picks the most
Yep,
profitable algorithm and protocol. I watched all of them
yeah,
just tank immediately as soon as
yep,
ETH went offline. It was terrible. I'm waiting for it to become profitable again before I turn mine back on. So,
yeah,
with that being said, that's cool. I have the same strategy across multiple projects like fraction mining, where I want exposure to as many different protocols to hedge my bets, if you will. So it's cool that you're doing 3 different proof of work, potentially 4 if you're thinking of, if you consider merge mining between LTC and Doge. So you're getting Bitcoin exposure, Kadena exposure, Litecoin exposure, and Doge exposure with the current plans in place. And those are getting paid out in those assets because it's just sharing the hashing rewards. That's it.
sure.
So
Yep,
you're not like getting paid out a percent or anything like that. You're going to be getting Bitcoin to your Bitcoin wallet, Kadena to your Kadena wallet, Litecoin to your Litecoin wallet, Doge to your Doge wallet. And then my strategy would be basically hodl that away. If I had to sell some in an emergency, I would, but I would try to hold on to it for the bull market, wait for Kadena to 10x or something, and then dump my stash and hopefully make out like a bandit. And same with my Bitcoin, and
there you
hopefully
go.
become a future Bitcoin millionaire. So that's my strategy, not financial advice. That's just what I'm planning on doing. And I'm also holding like a Hydra Whale NFT. I'm also holding like a Walrus Anglers Club NFT and an Ace Miners NFT, and they're all hashing reward sharing. So I'm also diversifying across projects doing this as well, and they're all doing it with different power sources and stuff. You have so many options out here, and I really like flare gas mining specifically. So I personally want to get heavily involved in this. So that I think it's just one of the most genius ways to utilize a resource that's going to waste right now. All right, now with that being said, I want to reiterate my next question. You kind of already answered, but so what do you think again is the biggest risk to participants in your project?
Yeah, that really is, the risk of the ASICs going that specific underlying proof of work asset, going away from ASIC mining. There's been changes in the past, and there's no one that can predict a change not happening in the future. Litecoin itself has gone through changes. You look at you go back to Bitcoin, right? You used to mine Bitcoin. You could mine Bitcoin on a CPU. So I mean,
Yeah,
no one is spared from change. And that by far would probably be the largest risk. I think we're a lot more set in. The foundation's been a lot more laid than it was, back in 2011, 2012, 2013. And so I think we kind of know where the future lies, but that probably is the biggest risk. And then
yeah,
who's to say that this is the lowest Bitcoin's going to go? If Bitcoin was to go, sub 8,000, sub 7,000, sub $6,000, then there we have certain plan A, plan B, plan C in place to mitigate potentially some of the issues there. But there could be times where, mind you, if Bitcoin's at $6,000, there's companies out there that are struggling way more than we are, and most everything is going to be much worse off than we would be. But at that point, you could see that we're still having to pay the electric bill, and you may not see revenues, but that or rewards at that point. So there is that form of risk exposure. On the Cadena side, we're looking at sub 6 cent Cadena, which would be hard to imagine Cadena going back to those lows. We're talking about Litecoin
yeah.
at $5. And I can't remember I forgot what Doge number was, but you're talking about just ridiculous opportunities that if we were to be in a situation like that, you have to also realize you don't typically stay in those situations for 5, 6 years, right? So those situations come and go, but they don't typically stay around for a long time.
Right. So that's interesting. So your biggest risks here, in your opinion, are technology changes that are too fast and unexpected, like somebody going proof of stake on you or things like that, and then
Yeah.
also you know, crazy black swan type bear market stuff into the
Yeah.
depths where then it's
Prolong.
where then
Yeah.
you're basically fighting it out against the other miners that have cheap
Yeah.
electricity as everybody else starts capitulating and dropping out of the hashing game, which also kind of makes you more profitable in terms of the hashing
True.
itself.
There's a give
So
and take, push and
yeah,
pull.
so you
Yeah.
could chart it out, and then people can really determine their risk reward ratio with what we just laid out there.
Yeah.
So good to know. Everybody listening is now more informed, and so you told us where you think this is going to be in about 6 months. You're going to have Kadena and Litecoin online. So where do you think this will be in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years?
Sure. And Alex, this has to be the last question. So,
Yeah,
because I got to get going.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you'll be
yeah.
able to kind of cut this in. Yeah. So I think in 5 years, our vision is to one be a lighthouse for a lot of companies, and for potentially the World Bank itself to look at cryptocurrency mining and to be one of the leaders to change the narrative behind the current narrative that's behind Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency mining in general, that it's bad for the environment. We want to be, whether we're at the forefront of that or we're alongside of others who are at the forefront of that, we want to be the change that we want to see in the crypto mining space. So, long term vision, we want people to look at how did the world solve GGRF? How did the world come to zero routine flaring by 2030? How did this happen in 7 years? And they look at Bitcoin, they look at proof of work, and they look at cryptocurrency. And I think that does wonders for adoption, that does wonders for the environment, and it does wonders for economy. So that's kind of where, when we're here looking at a 5 year vision, we're looking at the solutions that we can solve, the impact that we can have on the world, and how that impact can then be also shared amongst those who are going to be involved in our project.
Awesome. We are on the forefront of fintech and energy, and I love it. I love the space, man. So I know you got to get going real quick. If you had a guess of a projection with current hashing difficulties and prices and stuff, what do you think each NFT would generate if you were to sell that hashing power
Oof.
per month? So,
Yeah.
so
So
I had $15 in my calculations based on, I guess, on the electricity cost, but like $15 roughly per Bitcoin NFT maybe. What about Kadena and Litecoin?
dude, that's a tough one, right? So for us specifically, right, we're looking at what the hash rate would be, right? So really that just depends on the hash rate. Now we have the presentation document. The presentation document will be launched very shortly. So for a lot of people that are looking for that, looking a little bit more from a numbers perspective, are obviously going to want to look at that specifically.
Yeah.
Now, based on certain hash rates and stuff like that, I'd say maybe keep that on the down low. When the presentation paper launches, all the details are going to be in there. So that's something to look forward to if you want to look at some hash rate stuff. So I'm going
Okay.
to keep that one secret. We'll have the presentation paper, the presentation document. I think it's about 20 or so pages. It's going to give a lot of details on the insights of the hash rate, how it's going to exponentially increase as we continue to increase the hash rate through the growth of acquisition of more miners every 6 months. So you can see the graph of how that hash rate increases. So I hate to leave you on a cliffhanger there, Alex, but you're gonna
All
have to wait
right.
on that.
All right. All right. Well, I tried. You can't say I didn't try. And
There you go.
just for the record, like if you look at the top ASICs, like the KA3's at the top in terms of profitability, like it's
Yeah,
crazy how profitable those are, even in the bear market right now. Like Bitcoin, that
yeah,
those Bitcoin miners don't even like make the list.
yeah,
So just saying, if my projections were like 14, $15 per month for the Bitcoin NFT, you can imagine with the Kadena mining and the Litecoin miners being at the top of the profitability list by orders of magnitude, you
yeah.
can start guessing what those NFTs are going to do. And then
100%.
yeah, so all right. with all that being said, man, thank you for taking so much time with me. This is
Yeah,
such an involved project, and you're a legit company, right? You're not
yeah.
just a
We're
project. You're
registered.
a
Yeah, we're registered as the LLC, Fraction Mining LLC in Wyoming. So, yeah,
awesome.
registered stateside.
I love hearing that. You don't hear that often in the
No,
DeFi space. So that's fantastic. Alex, thank you so much. Everybody watching, go check out Tactical Investing on YouTube. Go subscribe to Alex. His channel's fantastic. And then go check out Fraction Mining. You can find them at fractionmining.com. I'll put the link in the description along with their Discord server. It's hopping over there. A lot of activity, very active community, and check them out on Twitter. They've got a nice Twitter following going. And this will be rolling out here in the next few days. If you're interested, check them out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all your time. And
awesome.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate the opportunity. We look forward to working with those who are interested in our community. Appreciate the platform and you willing to take time out of your day to listen to me talk. So I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to where we will be in the future.
Absolutely, man. Thanks again, and I'll talk with you later, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Bye now.